Hey everyone, Brian here from Vintage Classic Specialist. Happy Tuesday everyone. It is time for another episode of Day in the Life of Vintage Classic Specialist. So let's jump right in, see what happened today. If you're new here, these are the daily updates that we do, at least Monday through Friday, sometimes Monday through Saturday, about basically what happened, what we accomplished here in our little slice of VW heaven today, VW Restoration and sometimes repair shop. So why don't we talk about the 68 Ghia first? This is what Rafa worked on. So kind of started under the front hood here, and he prepared and installed some of the grommets here that basically where the fuel filler neck goes through the body there, and then it sort of comes up here. But yeah, I just kind of starting to get that ready. Our fuel tank, we had to have it actually like welded closed on the bottom. It had basically like rusted through in an area on the bottom of the tank. And so if you need somebody to restore a gas tank for you and you happen to be in the Orange County or especially the Orange area, you can use Tom's Radiator Service. They're just outside of the Old Town Plaza. Anyway, those guys do a great job. And so yeah, they patched up the bottom underside of that tank. I need to pick it up, but it's done. And tank will be going in pretty soon. But anyway, so yeah, he started off kind of with that stuff there. And then from there, what he did was he kind of continued on the dash. So if you've been following the channel, you know that he got a good portion of the wood grain dash in here recently. So today he actually installed the wood veneer on the glove box door here. And it's a lot of work, guys, to install these wood grain panels. They look amazing, but you don't just like spray some glue on there and slap it on. It's a little finicky to get everything to lay super nice like you see here. And with the kind of glue that we use, which is upholstery glue, you apply it to both surfaces, you let it sit and tack up for a while. And at that point, guys, it is super unforgiving. Once two surfaces touch each other that have that stuff on, you better hope that everything's in the right place, because that stuff locks together like you would not believe. That's kind of the downside of it, but at the same time, once it's on, it ain't going nowhere. So that's what we use anyway. So yeah, that went on, and then he put, obviously the hinges in and everything, got it all working nice. Little rubber bumpers are in here. So obviously the glove box itself, the box part of the glove box isn't in there yet, but yeah, so this all went on. Still waiting on the gauges. Messaged our gauge guy today, and I don't know what's going on with him. Hopefully he gets those done sometime soon. He's had them for maybe 6 months now. I don't know. Honestly, I lost track. So let's see what else Rafa did today. He put together the wiper assembly and tested it out. And so let's see if we can see that up underneath here. So there's the shafts coming through the body, obviously there. Brand new shafts. And then the assembly itself, kind of hard to see, but you can see the motor right there, and the frame and the arms and all that stuff. So yeah, that's in there. And he bench tested it, made sure it worked. Bench tested the switch itself, which you can see right there. So yeah, all these original parts just basically cleaned up, powder coated, etc. And yeah, everything is working. So super cool. So I think that was Rafa's kind of main part of his day, is working, essentially this area on here, the glove box, the wiper, that grommet, wiring stuff, testing stuff, assembling stuff. When you kind of go through it like that, it doesn't really sound like a lot, but this stuff is kind of tedious and time consuming. So pretty easy to burn through a good portion of a day doing even just what sounds like a handful of things like that. But anyway, so that was, for the most part, Mr. Rafa's day. For my part, I started off on this motor here, which is out of this blue 64 over here. So Jacob, primarily Jacob, and I helped a little bit. We got the motor out of this car yesterday, and then he went ahead and stripped it down to a long block, except the exhaust was still on it as of this morning. So I finished up kind of just pulling the exhaust off, and then yeah, it's pretty much ready. So Brothers Machine Shop is going to pick up this long block tomorrow, and we're talking about building it up into a 1904, which is a 74 millimeter crank. It's the one that I've been using a lot lately, counterweighted 74. But instead of going with 1600 size pistons and cylinders, which again makes it a 1699, we're going to bump those up to 90.5s, which with the stock crank makes it a 1776, but this will be a 1904. And then we're probably going to put some round port heads, like 40 by 35.5 heads, and then maybe we might even go with some IDFs, 40s or 44s, maybe probably 44s. So yeah, we'll see. It's going to be a pretty potent little motor. And so yeah, still some details to work out. But Brothers Machine Shop is going to have their guy pick it up tomorrow, and they'll tear it down, and then we'll see where to go from there. So kind of started off my day on that. And then let's see, after that, I pretty much turned my attention to this guy, which is, of course, the chassis for this beautiful 67 Beetle here in Java green. Car was originally pearl white. So yeah, again, I want to probably put the body on the pan a little sooner rather than later, because right now it's taking up 2 spots in the shop. One of those spots could be taken up with another project. Space is at a super premium around here, guys. So want to kind of get these 2 taking up 1 spot here, again, sooner rather than later. But there's certain things that I really wanted to do, before the body goes on, that are much easier to do when the body's off. And so I think I mentioned those the other day. I went ahead and installed the master cylinder, which itself isn't necessarily that hard to install when the body's on, especially if the gas tank is out, because I usually like to do it from the top. However, the main reason I installed that is so I could form and install all the brake lines, especially the long one that goes from the rear portion of the master cylinder kind of around the brake pedal assembly, and then all the way back and through the back of the car, and then ultimately to the T. So formed and installed that one, and then also went ahead and formed and installed the one that goes from the T to the right brakes, and then from the T to the left brakes in the back. So got those all out of the way. Again, much easier to do those with the body off. And went ahead and also hung the brake hoses on the back. Those, of course, sort of clip onto the swing axles like this, and then a hard line goes from there to the brakes. We are putting disc brakes on the back of this, though, so I don't really remember how, if we do still use a hard line or what. I'm going to have to look into that. But for now, anyway, for sure, up to there, everything is what we'll be using. Those I'm not 100% sure about, but anyway, so that's done. And then I did temporarily put in the pedal assembly because I wanted to check the routing of that hard line right there to make sure it wasn't going to interfere with the motion of any of these pedals. And so you can see there's all kinds of clearance there, which is what we want. Those have to come back out though, because there's no clutch cable in there yet. But and I don't have the little stop that you set where these sit at. I'm gonna get that from Brian Washburn, thing that bolts right there and sets where the pedals stop at. Anyway, so yeah, and then I'll probably go ahead and route the clutch cable through here as well. Maybe even go ahead and route the throttle cable through, and then I can go ahead and install this pedal assembly in a permanent fashion. A little bit easier to do without the body on, because you're not sort of crawling, through the door and underneath the front firewall and stuff here. So, other than that, I think I will probably do the front beam once the body's on, because I do like having this dolly on so I can move it around. On the back of the car, in fact, I've started bringing the parts in from our container here, all powder coated. So there's the spring plates, there's the torsion bars. I got all new bushings, of course. The torsion bar covers are also in there, powder coated. So I'll probably go ahead and at least set up the rear spring plates on here and index those to the correct ride height. Probably not going to put the transmission in quite yet, because I do want to, again, leave the dolly on the back of the car so that even when the body goes on, we can easily move it around. And probably once those two are together, it's probably going to go into that spot right there. So we shall see, guys. But anyway, yeah, so some assembly on this. That was kind of my afternoon. I did forget part of my morning earlier when I was talking. And what I did then after I pulled the exhaust off of the motor for this car is I went ahead and pulled this transmission out. So pretty much kind of a big job. Actually, guys, I think it's a bigger job than pulling the motor out, because you got to disconnect the axles from the spring plates. You got to disconnect and you know, essentially like disassemble the full brakes, remove the backing plates, pretty much strip the transmission down to just the transmission with axles hanging out of it. And so, yeah, so that came out today as well. And then already went ahead and had our transmission guy picked it up. So probably have that built in a few weeks or so, knowing him. No huge hurry, but we're also going to re-gear it some, because he's going to have way more power than he used to, and make it more, you know, kind of freeway friendly and you know, modern traffic friendly in that sense. So I do also, though, while the back's apart, I'm probably going to re-index his spring plates to lower it maybe like 5/8 or 3/4 of an inch. And then I don't think I mentioned this yet, but today from our friends at Air-Cooled Vintage Works, Jason over there, his front non-drop spindle, in fact, stock spindle front disc brakes, wide 5, came in. His bitchin' 25 millimeter master cylinder, which is pretty much what we use on everything. And then in bubble wrap right there is his stock width adjustable front beam, because if you saw the show the other day when I was talking about this car, yesterday in fact I think, we're going to lower it subtly. So we don't want to do drop spindles on the front, because then you're automatically 2 or 2.5 inches down. We're talking more like an inch. So you can get that much with an adjustable beam without getting like crazy horrific front suspension geometry, which is what you get if you try and slam them without spindles. But in this case, for subtle lowering, just a adjustable beam with stock height spindles, we can bring it, you know, the angle of those arms, you know, a little bit closer to level. Even a little past level is okay. They still ride pretty decent, and achieve like a, you know, maybe a 1 inch drop or so. And then the back, probably again, I'll go ahead and do like a 3/4 of an inch drop. These cars typically sit a little nose high, and this one wasn't any exception. So that's why the back, I don't want to go down like a full inch. So I'm probably going to err more on the side of, like I said, 5/8 or 3/4 of an inch. And then with the front, I'll level the car out and then maybe give it a hair, like a teeny tiny bit of rake, like barely perceptible, but if anything, err on the side of like slightly nose down here versus, you know, the front end up like a stock one. So it'll be subtle and it'll look cool, and you'll probably have to kind of look twice to notice that it's lowered. And I think that's kind of what we're going here for. Definitely don't want it slammed. Want it subtly lowered where it looks like, to me anyway, when they're like that, they kind of look like how they should have come from the factory. So that's kind of what we're going to do here. So that is what I did on that one and this one today. So let me talk very briefly about this guy, which I haven't touched yet, by the way. I'll set something down over here. So a couple things. One is that the transmission that's in there now, which I mentioned is somehow like locked into third gear, and that's why he has a new transmission for it. The transmission that's in there now doesn't seem to have the correct nose cone on it. So if you take a later, what are called tunnel style transmissions, which are later transmissions that would have come in like, you know, say like a 61 and up car, and you use the nose cone that just came on those, then what happens is the motor sits tilted like this, because the nose cone isn't really correct for the mounting up on the front of the nose cone of these. So the motor ends up sitting like this. And so on this car, what's going on is exactly that. And you can see the tailpipes are sitting kind of low in the openings, and the breastplate right here is actually completely underneath the seal channel on the apron. And so it fits in the car. This motor fits in the car. However, when we put that transmission in, which again, what you do is you actually use a bus nose cone on these, and then you change the hockey stick and stuff in there so they shift correctly. But anyway, when you put this in there with a bus nose cone, it levels everything out, and the motor and everything is sitting exactly how it is supposed to sit. So what that means is that the back of this motor is going to come up like an inch. And so what I don't think the owner necessarily realized is that that's what's going to happen. And so all this tin, the breastplate especially, and I think also the cylinder tins where they go out to the sides, all that stuff's going to have to be trimmed for this motor to fit back in this car. And you can kind of tell that the motor's tilted because there's just an enormous gap. You can like shove your whole fist in there and still have room between the fan shroud and the firewall. Because again, the whole motor is like sitting, you know, like this basically. So that's all going to come up when the transmission goes in with the right nose cone on it. And it is going to cause a crap ton of problems, guys. So I need to talk to the owner. I don't know that he watches this show, and explain all this to him and help make sure he understands that I'm not just going to pop this motor out, pop that transmission in, and then pop the motor back in. When the motor goes back in, there's going to be a lot of test fitting, a lot of trimming, etc., to even get this thing back in here. So yeah, it's actually a much bigger job than I think he probably understood it was going to be. But you know, it'll be done right because that's how we do things. Anyway, so that's one thing I wanted to talk about on this car, is that that's going to happen when the new transmission goes in. The other I want to talk about is this. Does anyone know what this is? This is what's left of the, I don't know, it's like a puzzle. I don't think I could even piece this thing together if I wanted. This is the steering coupler, or what's left of it, that was on that car. So you guys have probably all heard of these steering couplers that are made out of urethane, which urethane is a fine material for like suspension bushings and stuff like that. But there's a reason the stock steering couplers were made out of rubber and had layers and layers and layers of cloth in them, so that if the rubber failed, you still had steering, and they could not fail catastrophically, at least to my knowledge. And I've seen them before where the rubber was pretty much completely gone and the car would still steer because the cloth was still sort of holding everything together. So this car, the red 57, when we went to move it into the shop today, we had one of the guys, actually Santiago, was sitting in the car pushing the clutch in, because again, right now it's stuck in third gear with the transmission that's in there. So we got to have somebody sitting in the car. So pushing the clutch in, and then started to turn it as Renee and I pushed the car, and he started to turn it, and all of a sudden the steering wheel just went with no effort at all. And so the gas tank wasn't bolted in. We pulled the gas tank, and we didn't see any coupler in there at all. And kind of thought that was weird. And so we kind of like jury rigged it together to get the car to steer. And after we moved the car, where the car was sitting was this. So yeah, if you've ever heard horror stories of these failing catastrophically, they are 100% true. Just moving this car around on the driveway, it went from basically having steering to having zero steering. So do not use these urethane steering couplers. If you have one on your car, please remove it as soon as possible. This thing could literally kill you if you're driving, and it did that. So there's my public service message for the day, guys. Get rid of that thing if that's what you got. All right, guys. So a little bit of a long episode today. Sorry for kind of ranting on a little bit about a couple things here, but anyway, that is it for today. Thank you all very much for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.